My own sister tried to drug me at her anniversary party, so I switched the glass and let her husband drink it instead. That's not a joke, I saw her do it with my own eyes. I'm Emily, 34, and what happened that night shattered every illusion I ever had about family. You want to know what betrayal looks like? Stick around, because what came next turned her whole world upside down. The party was at the Bellevue Hotel, one of those places where everything sparkles just a little too much to feel real. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls above perfectly polished floors, and there was an ice sculpture swan so detailed it looked like it might flap its wings. A string quartet played softly in the corner, while 60 guests buzzed with champagne flutes, all raising glasses to my sister Victoria's perfect 10-year marriage to... From the outside, it was a fairy tale. But anyone who really knew us, who really knew her, might have picked up on the cracks hiding beneath all that glitter. Victoria has always been 3 years older, prettier, in that magazine cover kind of way, and somehow always 2 steps ahead, even when she didn't deserve to be. Growing up, she wasn't just my sister's, she was my shadow and my competition. I made the cheerleading squad, she whispered lies that got me cut. I got my first boyfriend at 16, she flirted her way into his arms before the month was out. And every time I tried to speak up, our parents, Richard and Linda, would just smile like it was normal. Sisters being sisters, they'd say, like betrayal was just part of girlhood. I learned young that no one was going to protect me from her. Not even the people who were supposed to. Still, I showed up that night in a sleek black dress, high heels, and a shaky kind of confidence. I'd just gotten promoted at work, finally leading a team after years of late nights and proving myself in a boys' club office. But I was also quietly mourning the end of a 2-year relationship, one I thought was heading toward a ring. I figured a fancy party with good wine and forgettable conversations might give me a little breathing room, maybe even a sense of normal. What I didn't know, what no one knew, was that this wasn't just a party. It was a trap, a performance that would end with betrayal, a glass of champagne, and a decision that would turn my sister's perfect night into something she'd never forget and never forgive. Things started off smooth, or at least as smooth as anything ever goes with my family. Dad was stiff in his tux, standing too straight like he always did at formal events, probably rehearsing his toast in his head. Mom was flitting around the tables, fussing over candle heights and napkin folds as if the wrong linen fold might collapse the entire evening. They both hugged me tight when I walked in, beaming in that performative way parents do when they want everyone to think everything's perfect. Victoria floated across the ballroom like she owned it, her Vera Wang dress hugging every inch of her like it had been designed just for her, and maybe it had. "Cute dress, Em. Rent it?" she said with a sugary sneer, her lips curving, but her eyes cold. I could have fired back, but I let it go. Not tonight, not here. I told myself I was above her petty digs. Then Michael, her husband, found me in the crowd. He looked exactly how I remembered. Handsome, kind eyes, and a smile that made you feel like you mattered. "How's the new gig?" he asked, and for the first time that night, I felt seen. We chatted for a bit, just easy talk, nothing flirty, nothing strange, but then I caught Victoria's eyes from across the room, and they were narrow, locked on us like a hawk zeroing in. She marched over, snatched him by the wrist, and hissed something into his ear that made his shoulders stiffen. Whatever it wasn't sweet. At dinner, I kept watching them. Their hands never touched, their eyes never really met. The smiles they gave for the camera flashed too wide, too staged. Michael looked tense, distant, but every now and then his gaze would drift toward me, like he was trying to figure something out. Or maybe like he wanted to say something he couldn't. I started to feel that twist in my gut, the one I used to get as a kid when Victoria was scheming and I didn't know what yet. Still, I tried to shake it. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was reading too much into things. After dinner, I slipped away to the bathroom, needing a break from all the small talk and fake laughing. When I came out, I paused near the ballroom doors, adjusting my clutch, and that's when I saw it. Reflected in the tall hotel windows, it was Victoria at my table. Not chatting, not checking her makeup. She was leaning over my champagne glass, doing something with her hand, and then I saw it clearly. The slow drop of a tiny tablet, the faint fizz in the golden liquid, and the smirk spreading across her face as she turned away. She thought no one saw. She thought she was safe. My heart slammed against my chest like a fist. I ducked behind the column, hand over my mouth, brain racing. What the hell was that? Was she really... Did she actually just put something in my drink? Who even does that? My skin went cold. 100 scenarios spun through my head. Was it to humiliate me? To make me sick or worse? And why? Because I talked to Michael? Because she needed to prove she could still hurt me in front of a whole room full of people? My legs felt like jelly, but my mind was on fire. I couldn't just drink it. I couldn't ignore it. I had to do something, but I also knew I had to be smart. If she wanted to play dirty, I'd show her I'd learned from the best. My head was spinning, but not from the champagne. It was like a film reel playing in reverse, showing me all the moments I had overlooked, all the signs I had shrugged off over the years. This wasn't new. Back in college, Victoria's roommate mysteriously got food poisoning the night before her final interview for a dream internship. I remember Victoria brushing it off, saying something about bad sushi, but then she showed up at that interview the next morning in a perfectly pressed suit, smiling like nothing happened. She got the position. I remember feeling a twinge of unease, but I let it go. I wanted to believe she wasn't capable of something like that. But standing there in that ballroom, staring at the glass she'd tampered with, it all started to make sense. This wasn't just jealousy. It was control. It was fear. And it hit me, almost all at once. This wasn't about the past, or even really about me. It was about Michael. Earlier, at the bar, he'd leaned close, speaking low so no one else could hear. "This marriage is choking me," he confessed. 10 years of walking on eggshells. "I stay because of the business and the family stuff." His voice had cracked a little when he said that last part. We'd only talked for a few minutes, but there was weight in his words, something heavy and tired. Victoria must have seen us talking, maybe even heard enough to send her spiraling. And knowing her, spiraling didn't mean tears. It meant tactics. She didn't just assume I was a threat. She decided I needed to be removed. My skin prickled as I tilted the glass again, watching the tiny, unnatural fizz settle. There wasn't much left in the drink. She hadn't overdone it, probably just enough to make me woozy or sick or look sloppy in front of people. Just enough to embarrass me, maybe sabotage my job, my reputation. Something she could blame on the alcohol. But if I called her out, she'd deny it. She'd twist the story, play the victim, cry until people rushed to her side. She was good at that. Too good. I needed a way to reveal her without saying a word. I needed proof, something she couldn't spin. And then it came to me wild, dangerous, absolutely insane. What if I didn't drink it, but someone else did? Not just anyone. Michael. If she was willing to drug her own sister over a perceived threat, maybe he needed to see who he was really married to. My brain screamed at me to be careful, but something deeper, something fed up, something "don't" took over. I scanned the room. He was standing by the gift table, alone, looking a little dazed, like he wanted to escape but couldn't. Victoria was across the room laughing too loudly with her in-laws, keeping up appearances. I picked up my glass, my heart hammering so loud I could feel it in my ears, and walked over like nothing was wrong. "Michael," I said cheerfully, "let's toast the happy couple." He gave me a tired smile, raising his brow. "Another toast? They've had enough speeches tonight." I laughed, stepping closer, lowering my voice. "Just us. To 10 more years." He reached for his whiskey glass without thinking. That was my moment. In one smooth move, I swapped Amy glass for his, right in his hand. "Champagne's better for toasts anyway, don't you think?" I said it just loud enough for anyone nearby to hear, to make it sound normal. He blinked at the switch, confused but polite, and raised the glass. "To truth," I said, locking eyes with him. "Truth," he replied, and he drank it. Just like that, 1 sip, 2, gone. I barely raised his whiskey to my lips, letting it graze my mouth before setting it down. My eyes darted to Victoria. She was smiling like a cat watching a mouse she thought she'd already caught. She thought I was already swaying, already feeling the effects of her little surprise. She had no idea what was coming. Not yet. Not even close. For the next half hour I kept an eye on Michael from across the room, pretending to mingle while my heart pounded like a drum in my chest. At first, nothing happened. He laughed with a cousin, sipped some water and made a few polite jokes, but then I saw it. The first sign. He tugged at his tie, fidgeted like he couldn't breathe, his collar suddenly too tight. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead, even though the ballroom was cool with AC. He started muttering to Dad about something and then just stopped, mid-sentence, blank, like someone had unplugged him. Then came the next shifty, hit the dance floor with no rhythm, no grace, moving like a frat boy at his first party. He was way too loose, stumbling in a way I'd never seen from him, arms waving, laughing too loud. People turned, heads tilted, whispers started. Victoria rushed over, trying to keep it together, gripping his arm with a too-tight smile. "Babe, you're done, let's bounce," she said, teeth clenched. But Michael just laughed and dodged her. "I'm actually having fun," he slurred, spinning away, barely missing a centerpiece. I stood frozen, breath shallow. Then she came for me, cutting across the floor with fire in her eyes, her heels clicking like gunshots. She cornered me near the dessert table, her voice low and furious. "What did you do?" she spat. I met her glare with steel. "I didn't drink your poison." She looked around wildly. "You saw nothing, the window showed everything." "Victoria," I said, my voice steady. That was when her mask slipped, just for a second. Her voice dropped, fake sweet. "It was just a sedative, to calm you down. You've been so stressed lately." I stared at her. A sedative. That's a crime, especially mixed with alcohol. She rolled her eyes. "Chill, I was helping you. You've been spiraling since your breakup." I shook my head. "You saw me talking to Michael, and you lost it. Your jealousy's toxic." Her eyes narrowed. She opened her mouth to fire back. But then crash, Michael stumbled into the gift table, knocking over wrapped boxes and glass vases. People gasped. He slurred out an apology, eyes glassy, barely able to stand. Guests started whispering, "Is he drunk?" But I knew better. Victoria rushed to him, hands on his chest, her voice too high. "He's fine, just too much champagne." But Michael was unraveling fast. Room spinning, he muttered, then tripped into a waiter, sending a tray of champagne flutes crashing to the floor. That did it. Mom pushed through the crowd. She's a nurse. Always calm, always in control. "Michael," she said, holding his face gently. "What day is it?" He stared at her, totally lost. "What's today?" she repeated, sharper. He didn't know. "Any meds?" she asked, looking straight at Victoria. "Just booze," Victoria said too quickly, eyes flicking toward me. Mom turned to Dad. "Call an ambulance." "He's fine," Victoria cried, but Dad shook his head. "This is a mess." Guests backed away, the music now awkward and distant. In a small private room off the main hall, while we waited for paramedics, Victoria exploded. "This is on you," she screamed at me. I didn't flinch. "No, you drugged my drink," I said calmly. "Tell them." Dad's face went pale. "You what?" he shouted. Victoria broke. "It was just a sedative. To relax her." Mom gasped like she'd been punched. "You drugged Emily?" I nodded. "I saw her in the window." I swapped our glasses. Michael deserved to know the truth. Michael, slouched in a chair, looked at her, blinking slow. "You tried to drug her?" he whispered. "Why?" Victoria choked on a sob. "You were all over her, like you used to be with me." "I saw the way you looked at her." Michael closed his eyes. "She's family. We were talking." "That's it." Paramedics rushed in. "Any drug use?" one asked. "Sedative with alcohol," I said. Victoria blurted, "Ativan, 1 pill." "My prescription." The lead medic's eyes narrowed. "Benzodiazepines and alcohol? That's dangerous." "He's lucky he's upright." They loaded Michael onto a stretcher, checking vitals and prepping for transport. As they wheeled him out, Michael reached for my hand. His grip was weak, but his voice was steady. "Thanks," he said, eyes locking on mine. "Thanks for the truth." Victoria stood alone, shaking in her designer dress, as the doors closed behind them. The hospital's fluorescent lights didn't just expose what was wrong with Michael. They exposed every crack in our family. Dad paced the hallway, jaw clenched, muttering to himself. Mom sat stiff on a plastic chair, arms folded so tight it looked like she was holding her ribs in place. "Victoria?" She clung to Michael's hand like if she held on tight enough he might forget what had just happened. They left me in the hallway with their anger. Dad turned first, his voice low but sharp. "You coulda just dumped the drink." I met his eyes. "She would have lied. Again. You know that." He didn't answer. Mom shook her head, her voice sharper. "So you risked Michael instead." I looked down, heart heavy. I didn't know it had hit him that hard, but if I didn't act, she'd do it again. Just to someone else. The doctor came out a few minutes later. Michael was stable. Tired. He'd be okay, but he needed to be monitored overnight. Then came the real bomb. "We're required to report this as a drugging," the doctor said. That one word hung heavy in the air. Victoria returned from Michael's bedside looking hollow, mascara smudged, her dress wrinkled like she'd finally stopped pretending. "I saw you two talking and I just snapped," she said, eyes wide and raw. "You were glowing. I wanted you to look messy, not perfect." I stared at her, years of anger and confusion boiling over. "You've always done this. Remember your roommate in college, the one who suddenly got sick before her big interview?" Her mouth opened, but she didn't deny it, just closed it again and looked away. The cops came, took statements, asked questions. Victoria sat silent through it all. Later that night, Michael asked to see me. He looked pale, shaken, but clearer than I'd ever seen him. "She's done this before," he said, sliding a folder toward me. Inside were notes, screenshots, timelines, years of emotional manipulation. "No charges. I'm leaving her. A court fight would destroy us both, and I want peace, not war." I told him I respected that. Promised I'd back him however he needed. 1 week later, we all sat in my parents' living room, quiet, awkward, like the air was made of glass. Victoria looked small, without her usual Armorno lipstick, no designer dress, just sweatpants and a therapist's report in her hand. "I've fought for everything my whole life. Love, attention, success. And when I saw Michael with you, it broke something in me." Her voice cracked. "My therapist says I might have borderline personality disorder. I'm sorry, Emily, for everything." For the first time in forever, she sounded real. Not defensive, not polished, just human. I didn't jump to forgive her. I said, "Maybe we could try therapy together." She nodded like she knew that was more than she deserved. Michael filed for divorce a few weeks later, citing emotional abuse. 6 months passed. We met for coffee, just the two of us. She looked different. Jeans, a plain hoodie, no makeup. Tired, but softer. "Therapy's hard," she said, stirring her coffee. "I finally get it, why I did what I did. I've always felt like I had to fight everyone, compete with you, with myself." She told me the divorce was final. Michael had moved on, new city, new job, clean slate. She was moving too, Seattle, not running, she said, healing. I believed her, or at least I wanted to. She asked if she could hug me. I let her. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. On the drive home, something clicked in me. That awful night, filled with fear, betrayal, chaos, it hadn't just cracked things open. It forced change. Michael was free. I was stronger. And Victoria? Maybe she was finally facing herself. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive her. Maybe someday. But I know this. Sometimes it takes the worst kind of moment to show you what needs to be fixed. Sometimes the breakdown is the beginning. Has betrayal ever flipped your whole world upside down? Drop your story in the comments. And if this hit close to home, subscribe, because even the ugliest pain can lead to something worth growing from.